Hey everybody. So I'll start with introductions, and assuming that's there be somebody tuning in that doesn't know us. This is Jeff and Elizabeth Vaudrey. We own Tipple Spruce and Wine in Gainesville, Florida, and today we're going to be tasting a red blend from California named Le Mistral. And we actually I'm really happy that we're joined by Eddie Morris today with the Folktale Wine Group. That's one of their wines. They have a lot of great wines. And actually, after the tasting we just had last week, you'll be seeing a lot more of their wines in the store throughout this year. He's got a great lineup. So the Le Mistral is a red blend, but it's a red blend that will be very different from a lot of the red blends that you're going to see out of California, because it is not a Bordeaux blend. You're not dealing with Cabernet, Merlot, and that type of thing. So, or Zin even. But this one is Grenache and Syrah, so it's more of a southern Rhone area of France red blend. And when I drank it, I immediately loved the complexity, and it's delicious. And if Eddie doesn't mind, I will be happy to hand it over to him because he knows a lot more about this wine than I do.
Yeah, no, thank you guys so much. I was just telling. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Should we go ahead and pour?
Oh, cheers, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I forgot to tell everyone to pour. That's my job. My bad.
Yeah, here. Just so you guys know, this is the truth. There's the bottle.
Yeah, right.
I swear to God, it's Le Mistral that's in there. And I'm going to pour some more just so that we're, bam.
Okay.
So I was just telling Jeff and Elizabeth, this is actually my first real virtual tasting with customers. So it's kind of a new thing, I guess, for me and probably for a lot of you as well. So thanks for taking the leap of faith with me and giving this a go. For those of you who have been doing it, please don't be critical. I appreciate that. I'm going to try to switch my view here. I like to see as many people as I can at once. Nice backgrounds here. Is everybody here in Gainesville, I'm assuming? Is there like a digital like green sign or something people can throw up instead of having to say, yeah, okay, there you go, yeah. Good old thumbs up. I like old-fashioned stuff. So I'll share you guys with the wine and the details about the wine, all the technical details and stuff. But I think one of the more interesting things about this wine and this brand and this property is really the history. And this is a little bit of what I told Jeff, and I kind of wanted to dig a little bit deeper into it with you guys just to give you an idea of the real kind of pedigree behind all of this. And it's something as like anything else that's agricultural. You know, there's changes that take place year to year. Every vintage is a little different. But the original brand, the original vineyard site, this was all selected by Joseph Phelps, who kind of like made his name in Napa Valley, iconic label insignia I'm sure a lot of you have heard of. Cabernet Sauvignon based, a red blend, a Bordeaux style red blend, as Jeff was just mentioning. That's kind of, I think, where people's minds initially go to when you say red blend in California in the same sentence. He always had sort of like a secret side passion for the Rhone varietals in the country of France, in that part of France. So after some travels there, he actually started producing Syrah out of Napa Valley back in the early 70s. But by the early to mid 80s, he was actually down in Central Coast with his winemaker of 40 plus years, Craig Williams, looking at properties, and actually ran into a guy who would eventually end up being a partner of ours, who is still a partner of ours to this day at Folktale Winery. So this has kind of all come full circle. It's crazy. I started working for Folktale. It's been 7 years actually as of May. In my first year with these guys, I was selling the 2006 and up to the 2008 vintages of Le Mistral. You guys now have the 2017 vintages in your glass. So it's been actually a pretty huge evolution, even just from the time that I started working for these guys. And the wine has changed tremendously. But from the time 1990, when he basically first released the first vintage of Le Mistral as we see it now, a lot has changed. He sold the brand away to the guys that we're now partners with in 2008. No bad blood or anything like that. He was just getting old. Joseph Phelps passed away about 6-7 years ago now, I think in his late 80s. So the man lived a very long and prosperous, and I mean, he was an iconic Napa Valley winemaker. The coolest thing about this property and getting to be involved with it is that, you know, this was something that this man held true to his heart, deep, like a really unique kind of thing about his personal take on wine and what good wine is. And to be perfectly honest and not to be crass, but at a fraction of the price of what insignia costs. You know, this is something that we try to sell out of the winery somewhere between $40 and $50 a bottle, depending upon the year and how much we produce. What you guys currently have in the glass, we did right around 2,700 six packs, which is actually a pretty robust harvest for us. It's also the flagship wine that we produce in this series. So Les Mistral is basically the kind of Rhone side of the Folktale winery production. It's basically kind of the Rhone brand of our production at Folktale and Carmel. So the blend you're going to get here is always kind of like around a 60 to 65% Grenache, and that's your primary component. The rest is mostly Grenache, or excuse me, Syrah. And if you look at the tech sheet on the website right now, and some of you guys are probably peeking at it already, it doesn't even say it in the actual composition breakdown, but there is some Petite Sirah in this vintage, which is a little bit of an adjustment. Last year we went a little bit more subtle. We did some Viognier. It wasn't co-fermented like a Côte Rôtie or something like that, but we did want to kind of brighten it up a bit and give it some more aromatics. The Petite Sirah, I think, gives it a little bit more color, a little bit more juiciness, a little bit more of a New World touch. And I kind of lean personally towards that cool climate, kind of more acid driven, a little bit more phenolic, tannic style. But this is always a nice expression of kind of like the New World meets the Old World. Do I see people throwing wine over there? That's awesome. This is like we're at a real tasting. Fantastic. Excuse me, a real in-person tasting. My bad. It is a real tasting. That's great.
Virtually real.
Virtually real, yeah. So we went a little.
The cap is hard to open. So
Oh, you know, I was actually hoping that I would catch you guys before everybody started popping bottles, because one of the biggest things I run into with this, and this is in the trade side too. I have restaurateurs all the time asking me, dude, I spent like an hour trying to get this wax off of here before we got in the car together. I'm like, don't even bother. Just take the corkscrew, go right through the top, and it'll pull it
really?
right through the wax. Yeah, that's the way to do it. So
I think, Eddie, you told me that we first met like a year ago. And I have probably told people that like 30 times and then like acting like I'm such a badass. But I got that from you. I totally stole it.
Yeah, and if you're already, you know, like on your second or third bottle with your group of friends, then you're in trouble, because you're going to sit there and fumble around with that cork for a long time. It's a pain in the butt. So we're also doing, just so you guys understand this, so in the very beginning, Joseph Phelps and Craig Williams, they were doing a kind of a range. You know, they were doing like the blend that's always kind of been the flagship, even when it was them that had the winery in the vineyard. They also did some rosé, they did some white, some Viognier. So currently, if you guys were to come out and visit Folktale, where we make the wines, we're doing a single varietal Grenache. So the Grenache that goes into this just by itself. Some of that we're doing whole cluster, whereas in the case of the blend, you're going to get primarily, you know, completely picked berries. So you're almost getting like a pure expression of the fruit in this, and we're trying to minimize the phenolics a little bit. And again, that's kind of like the balancing act between the New World versus Old World, and you know what the ultimate expression of what you get out of the bottle is. And that's to each person's personal preferences. This one will see 11 months in French oak. 15% of that French oak is new oak. So we kind of lend ourselves more towards seasoned barrels, new barrels, and specifically French. We treat our Rhone program a lot like we treat our Pinot Noir program. So most of what you're going to see is honestly seasoned French oak. You could call that a part of our sustainable mindset, because we're not trying to, you know, cut down a new tree every time we want to release a new vintage. We actually just like the effect that it has on the wine better. We'll use a little bit more of the new oak on our Syrah, just because it is a bigger varietal. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it was that the store, Jake is at the store, and so when somebody must have walked in, so I muted him. So
Yeah, there it is. Okay, gotcha.
it's all good. You can keep going.
So yeah, we use a little bit more of the new oak, and we're actually starting to play around with some American oak on the Syrah, because I think it takes on a little bit more of that tannic character that plays really well against some of that American oak nuance. Just like with a Cabernet, we'll produce maybe, you know, in a big vintage, like 500 6-packs of the Syrah. So that's something like that if we were ever to get together and do a wine dinner or something like that, that's kind of one of those things I keep around for special occasions. We're also doing Viognier, single varietal Viognier. We're doing a little bit of a white blend now, a Grenache Blanc, which is fantastic. And then a rosé of Grenache Blanc, which sounds like a completely counterintuitive thing, right? So we're actually doing, and it's not an orange wine, we're actually passing the juice of the Grenache Blanc over the Grenache skins, the actual Grenache, you know, rosé, or excuse me, red skins, to get a little bit of color. and it's just the palest hue of pink. But it is like one of the most brilliant, like acid driven, like just wonderful wines. And again, this is one that we might make, in a big year, 156 packs or something like that. So it's a lot of fun. I mean, this is, to me, one of the more exciting parts of our production, only because we're still a relatively young winery in terms of what Folktale is. Sorry, guys, I have an 8-month-old in the background here. He's just gone to bed. It sounds like he's waking up. So if you guys hear a baby crying, it'll probably be temporary. He's otherwise usually a good sleeper. Of course, the night that we're doing a tasting, he's going to start getting crazy. So yeah, and with that, I would like to maybe tell you guys a little bit about the winery too. So Folktale, we do probably a portfolio is now up to, we have like about 10 or 11 different labels. We do everything from Pet Nat, which is Pétillant Natural, basically, like bottle conditioned or bottle fermented sparkling wines, all the way to, we're starting to mess around now with red, kind of lesser known Rhone varietals like Cinsault, Mourvedre, stuff like that. That's actually pretty common in the Central Coast part of California. It's just only now, I think in the last few years, kind of started to grab hold among some of the more, I guess, kind of occult, wine drinking groups or winemakers. To me, some of these varietals are the coolest out there, and there's some of the most there's so much Cabernet being planted all around California right now, and it's such a waste of land. It's just that it draws a much bigger price tag. I think in moments like these, and kind of how my company started, which was right on the tail end of the Great Recession back at the end of 2008, 2009, these kind of disasters or crises sort of create new opportunities. I'm really hoping that this kind of opens the eyes of some of the winemakers out there, and you start to see a lot more production of some of the varietals that maybe they've actually been wanting to make, but they've just kind of been stuck and forced to, create the Chardonnays and the Cabernets that they feel safe making, because there's always going to be a market for that. I think a lot of people that are now buying more wine online, getting to kind of do a little bit more research and just have new things come to their doorstep every week. It's going to create kind of a new marketplace, and it's going to be interesting.
Thank you. That's awesome. I appreciate that. Actually, I love the fact that you talked about Carignan and Cinsault. Like one of the early tastings that we did 4 tastings ago was a South African red blend that was dominantly Carignan and Cinsault.
No kidding.
Yeah. It was
South African, you said?
Yeah, South African.
Cool.
It was fun.
Yeah. Jeff was one of the first people I actually went out and saw in person, when the kind of shelter in place and lockdown stuff started to sort of open up again. I'm based in St. Petersburg, Florida. Sorry, I probably should have mentioned that. I know you guys are all in Gainesville, but to give you a little bit of history on me, and I almost swore to myself that I wasn't going to mention it, but I did get my undergraduate degree in Middle Eastern history at Florida State. So please don't hold it against me. I am a Seminole. And then I ended up coming home and studying at USF to get a master's in business, which of course, I basically just went this way and that, never actually, I'm not using a lot of Arabic in my current career path. I can guarantee you that. But I've been in the wine industry now for nearly 15 years. So this is my life. And I've been with these guys, as I said, for 7 years, and I've had a blast. They're probably one of the coolest group of people. Obviously right now has been very trying. We're figuring it out every day, and we're still producing, but it's been, we need things to open back up. We need to be able to have people at the winery, and that's a really hard thing to overcome right now in California, as you could probably imagine.
Right. Sure. Yeah. So let's talk about the nose and the tasting. So let's everyone
sure
and get to.
So I'll just kind of give you guys my read on this, and I don't go right off of the tasting notes that we have. So what I'm telling you is kind of my own take on, and like I said before, to me, this wine is a great kind of middle of the road between New World and Old World. It kind of hits all elements. You're going to get some of that really kind of jammy berry, like that dark jammy berry, almost like a blackberry kind of a thing going on here, even like black cherry. And then there is some subtlety. There is, and Jeff pointed this out when we tasted together just last week. There is a little bit of this herbaceousness, like an herb de Provence or like a sage, which that's kind of stuff is what I love in wine. I'm really like the secondary flavors guy. I love green stuff. I love herbs. I love eucalyptus, all those kind of things. The oak's subtle. I mean, you're going to get like a little bit of the vanillin and the oak tannins from this, but It's so subdued. I mean, it's 85%, used barrels, some of which are twice passed. So you're not going to get too much of that, like really kind of like suck the liquid out of your mouth, kind of dry oak tannin. And the finish on this thing, I mean, I opened my bottle probably about a half an hour before I got on this call with you guys. I don't know what do you guys think? Did you guys open up early? Did you guys do it right before?
I mean, you just saw ours.
45 minutes ago.
Yeah, you guys just opened up 45. Yeah, that's usually the more time, the better I find with this one.
That's what
I don't mind decanting.
got better as I let it sit longer.
I did chill in the fridge for 30 minutes, but
That's a good move. I actually did the same thing. Yeah, I like these wines at like 50 degrees, 51 degrees. You start to get
leather,
like way
kinda?
more. Say
a
what?
leather like smell a little bit, or
Yeah, well, that's the thing is that like kind of saddlebag sort of leather sort of comes out once it has been opened up a bit.
Oh, yeah.
like earthy, kind of like
It's definitely earthy. It's like a fresh tilled soil. There's a smokiness that comes in there.
Totally
So
different.
I never even
Swirl it around.
not to take away from the tasting. One of the things that's unique about this growing area in Arroyo Seco. So Le Mistral refers to winds that blow over the Rhone Valley, of course, and this really aggressive wind, which has like been known to knock people off of bridges. We have a very similar effect in Salinas Valley, in between the Salinas and Gavilan mountain ranges that kind of spans both sides of this vineyard location. It's a little bit it's actually, this vineyard specifically is almost like right on the edge of the riverbed. So you get these massive, like smooth river stone rocks. We call them vineyard potatoes that sit right underneath the vines. The wind that comes through this part of the valley, though, is so aggressive that you'll get a 20-degree shift, from high noon to sundown. This gives longer hang time, more phenolic development. So despite, the de-stemming of these grapes and trying to really go for that almost like Beaujolais-esque kind of fruit, you really get this phenolic component that I don't think you could get otherwise if you were just sitting on the valley floor in any given part of the Central Coast. So those Mistral winds that play into the name and the origins of where the wine came from and, kind of Joseph Phelps' inspiration is actually a physical part of the terroir of where these grapes are being grown too, which is pretty cool.
You want some more?
Yes, please. Thank you. We should probably go into what the Mistral winds are as what did inspire them to name it this from the Rhone area, or you can either way.
Sure. You mean the winds themselves and what they are?
The winds themselves is like, what does La Mistral mean? Because
I'll tell you what, Jeff, I'm going to pass this one off to you.
okay. All right. So anyway, this wine is named after the winds that are within the wine world famous within the Rhone region of France. So they have right along that area, they end up having this incredible wind that blows through there, which does put constant. It serves a couple of purposes. It keeps the air moving, which lowers the amount of potential for molds and that kind of thing. So it dries out the area. It thickens the grape skins, and it is part of the famous reason why the Rhone in France produces such amazing Syrah and that type of thing. So inspired by that, and a lot of people do, they'll just grow Rhone varietals, Grenache Syrah, on a regular basis and not worry about the wind part. But this is an awesome area in that there's literally a geographic match, so to speak, over in California where they have that same type of wind affecting their vineyards. So for them to then recognize it, A, and put in the correct varietals, B, I think is just amazing. I think it's total badass.
No, but it. So I was like scared you were gonna like go into some like detailed like geological thing on like where these winds originate from, and because I've had people actually when I'm showing them this wine, and these are sommeliers and wine experts, whatever all around the country, and they're like, well, these winds actually originate in northern Africa, and I'm like, I don't think that's right. I'm pretty sure that they don't, because they're really cold winds, and they basically come like rushing down the Rhone Valley and south into the Mediterranean Sea. So I had been misled before, but no, thank you, Jeff. That's great. Like that's like a wonderful way of describing all that. And the fact that it actually does kind of keep the vines clear of like the botrytis, all the mildew and everything. Like that's a huge point because these berries do grow in really tight clusters, almost like Zinfandel can, not as erratic as Zinfandel, but yeah, given the right temperature conditions, especially with the way the climate has been changing in California the last 10 years, 15 years, the potential for rot has gotten incredibly more likely. So the wind is a natural, way to kind of help us and save a lot of labor, because otherwise people have to be out there, trimming those vines like every day, especially once we get bud break and then the berries start to come, because that's naturally what's going to happen. I wanted to mention one other thing too. This is kind of interesting because of the varietals that we've been talking about. I mentioned that we're starting to mess around with Cinsault, Mourvedre, some of the other kind of lesser known tertiary varietals, if you will, from that part of France. Alicante Boucher was the one that Joseph Phelps and Craig Williams were using consistently, vintage to vintage, for like 20 years. This was the varietal that, guys in California were shipping in bulk, like basically, fermented wine must, or wine must before, fermentation, but they were sending it over to the East Coast for people to like make their own homemade wines during Prohibition. So this was a varietal that was used in later days, like post-Prohibition, strictly for like color enhancement, a little bit sturdier, like kind of tannin content and stuff like that, because it's a really thick skinned, hardy grape. I just thought it was fascinating because when I first started working with these wines, that was the 3% to 5% in every single vintage. Since we've taken over, we've kind of cut out the Alicante Boucher and tried to gone back to the purest, except this vintage, of course, which has got Petite Sirah on it, and that's not, a French Rhone varietal that they would normally use. So, but just something I found interesting about past vintages of this label.
Yeah, well, like you say, it has its place in that, like you talked, this is kind of a bridge wine, which I love those wines. So that's one of my favorite things, where you have a bridge between Old World and New World. It's one of the reasons I love Willamette Pinot Noir and that type of thing, because it's these varietals and these locations that grow that are a bridge between the original French and the New World expression of those grapes. And I thought this was really good because it's got a very nice, rewarding fruitiness to it, absolutely, but it's got a lot of complexity and secondary flavors and aromas for you to enjoy. And I think I just thought it was excellent. So are you guys enjoying it? What do you think?
So you knew this question was coming, but for
Yes.
Myra's sake and Eddie, so my wife here, there's a long going battle about tannins. So how would you describe this wine tannin wise? Because like I taste it, it's very sweet. Like I don't get a lot of tannins, but she says yes. It's like,
but I'm also wrong 97% of the time. So
I think you're wrong here too.
John, are you asking me or are you asking Jeff?
It's not
Make sure
well, probably you. Yeah, Eddie. So just because you're
Sure.
Yeah.
This is what's so tricky about these things, because people I want to point too, because I'm like a real handsy person, but I'm like, what? I don't know what you're pointing at. So no. I don't think this wine is like a tannic wine by any stretch of the imagination. I think if you had to like put this on a scale of, New World versus Old World, this definitely leans more New World. One thing that I think I mentioned this when I tasted with Jeff, if you compare us to other producers in this part of California, in the Central Coast, we're specifically in Arroyo Seco, Monterey County. Bonnie Doon is one of the other iconic kind of well-known producers, Randall Graham, and his wines, if you were to just put a bottle of a red blend that he produces that's primarily Grenache versus ours, you're going to see way more of an Old World expression, more rustic, more dirt, more earth, more tannin. This one, and this is part of the reason for like the 90%, destemmed grapes that are going into the fermentation. We're taking away a lot of those phenolics and a lot of those green tannins that you get from the clusters themselves. And that is by design. I mean, we designed this wine, and as I said kind of before, last vintage we had a little bit of Viognier in there. This vintage we decided to go with some Petite Sirah, very small amount. I think it's about 3%. But either way, the whole idea is that, we have an audience and we need to be aware of what our audience is wanting to drink.
So the Old World concept is, and because we haven't really talked a lot about it in the past, but like, so the Old World concept is more of your drier, big bodied. Is that kind of what you're saying? Or is like, and then
depends
the
on your
World is
definition.
more of tannins versus, and so mine are sensitive to them, but so when I think of when I think of old world is I think of like when you try it, it's like you want your palate's very dry, like it dries out your palate. It's like there's a lot going on. So, and correct me if I'm wrong. So that's old world is like kind of concept. New world is maybe more of like you're kind of more mild, or
I think it's more. It's just more kind of an extracted fruit. You get more of that just direct. Like I get like there is a level of almost like a fruit punch character in this wine, and it's not. I mean, it's not like something that's just like, oh, this is ridiculous. Are we drinking Kool-Aid? No. I mean, there's subtlety to it, but it is, if you were to hold this up to, let's just say a daily table wine, Cote de Rhone that you just picked from just name a domain over there. I mean, there's going to be a distinct, difference between the two wines. But as Jeff was just mentioning, is like, he calls this a bridge wine, which is what I love. It's like, this is a connection. We'll never like try to convince someone, oh well, this is our old world Rhone wine. It's not. It's a new world Rhone wine, but it is Rhone varietals, and it's just our own expression of it. But yeah, fruitiness, the tannins being more back end and a little bit more. They're definitely more subtle. You know what I mean? Whereas they kind of lay down on your tongue and on your palate like immediately when you're drinking an old world wine. I always used to have a joke with my mom. I could never convince her to drink like, old Italians, any sort of like Southern French wines or even Bordeaux, because she was just like such, she wants to drink like Menage a Trois, or you name Apothic or, whatever the big red blend of the day is.
Really sweet.
She was a big Mondavi Woodbridge, Merlot drinker for all my years. That was probably the first red wine I ever drank because that was what was always in the house. But yeah, I could never get her to understand, why these wines are, you're able to appreciate those old world kind of rustic tannic wines. It's a different kind of tannin, and it's certainly a more extracted fruit. There's no doubt about it. Yeah.
Well, I would say it's a fruity wine. It's a fruit forward wine, but not sweet. It's still dry. So, but that is a very common thing, and it's a common difficulty in discerning the difference in there. We deal with it all the time, and it's part of the progression as you taste through wines, is to begin tasting fruit without thinking it tastes sweet, because
I could see that connection because
sure.
when you're growing up and you're having fruit and things, anything you associate with fruit, you associate sweet. So it would make sense if it's fruit forward that your brain goes immediately to sweet, even though it may not actually taste sweet.
Right. Well, and the thing is, when you look at it, you're like, well, for example, like Eddie was talking about with his mom drinking. If you're drinking a Mondavi Merlot that's crazy oaked with, and you're drinking all velvety plums and vanilla, you might even say sweet again. Still not quite actually the thing. It's just incredibly fruity and vanilla and that kind of a thing.
Yeah,
Still
I don't think of this as sweet. Is like so, and because that was I think it was Jake left, but it's like when we bought the bottle, I think on Sunday, he was saying like it's a very big sweet wine. It's like you want like steak or something like. So I was kind of picturing more, I don't know, like apothic sweet, like kind of something. So I was like, so I made ZD tonight, big ZD, but it's like, but then after I tried it, it's like it's not like that at all. It's like it's
this is like it's a lighter, bouncier kind of fruit, and it's funny. You can taste a barrel sample of this stuff, like just out of the stainless steel before we even get to an actual oak barrel. And I mean, it is like, this is at like, maybe 3% alcohol at this point in the fermentation, you know what I mean? And it is like bubble gum. I mean, it tastes like Kool-Aid. It is crazy. But the what you see from that point to this point, I mean, and as this wine ages in the bottle, which we usually don't get, I hold on to old bottles just to see how it kind of develop. This is the longest we barrel age. I mean, 11 months for a flagship wine. I mean, if we had a vintage where we only produced, let's say 1,000 6-packs of wine, that's 500 full cases. I mean, 11 months is like, you should be aging that wine for probably a year and a half. You know what I mean? Like you should be giving it the time and like kind of giving it some time to really develop and become something more complex and nuanced and charge a whole lot more money for it. Let's not kid ourselves, you know. So this is something we're trying to kind of make available, accessible, and give you the fruit, and give you a little bit of like kind of the complexity as well. So I hope that's what we're getting at. I hope we're getting there.
Yeah, and forgive me because I know we were a little bit late, but so this is barrel aged, right? It's like
Yeah. So we'll
oak barrels or
yep, yeah. So this is all French oak.
okay, and you said 11 months, and it's like
11 months, yeah. 15% new, 85% seasoned. And the thing is with the Grenache, we actually will start in concrete, which is becoming a very popular, you know, vessel. And I think what's really fun too and we're going to start doing just straight concrete and no oak whatsoever, which you guys want to talk about fruit, wait till that comes around. Cause that stuff is just going to be like, it'll be like Beaujolais. I mean, if we allow like any bit of carbonic to take place, it'll be nuts. But right before we started this call, I had a leftover bottle of a little bit of Fleury Cru Beaujolais. And I was like, you know what, let me have a glass of that with dinner just to kind of see like, and it's funny that we're going to probably get towards the end of the call here with this fruit conversation, how much like fruitier or fruit, like what's the comparison going to be with like a Cru Beaujolais and this wine that we produce in, you know, Monterey, California. And to be perfectly honest, it's comparable, you know, there are some similarities, which is pretty cool actually.
Oh yeah. Well, concrete does create some great wines, but you're right. A lot of the concrete wines I've had are Italians that drink a little bit like Beaujolais.
Yeah.
And you put a light chill on them and you just enjoy it on the back porch. It's like a hot weather red. And yeah, they're really nice.
Absolutely.
And by the way, props
this time
to
of year,
is that?
This time of year, I was going to say for the hot weather, these are the reds that you got to have.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
At least you have sea breezes in St. Pete. We do not have those in Gainesville.
The sea breezes are not as reliable as you would think, I swear.
So the Dickersons are having baked ziti with this, right? Is that what you said? So what is everybody else having?
I just had wine.
Wine, yeah.
That's right.
Perfect.
We made a fruitier charcuterie tray than normal. Less meat, cheese, more
Nice.
fruit.
Okay.
Very good. In my imagination, because I was working all day, because Tuesday is ordering day, but what I made was like bacon wrapped roast eggplant. How about that for this? That would be badass.
That was delicious. That's great.
If
You're
anyone
having
in your house had cooked this evening,
That's right.
that would be on your
If I were not about to eat a Publix roast chicken,
Lasagna.
lasagna.
Well,
lasagna.
Perfect. That's just like with the ziti, yeah.
lasagna, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm finding it's like whoever said, what did you guys make with your for the wine? You were having wine. That's becoming like the quarantine like kind of cliche now.
Renee.
right.
I mean, I point that way. I don't know where she's at on your guys' screen.
Yeah, no, it's funny. My friends are like, "What are you doing today?" Like, well, I started drinking at 10 a.m. I'm like, "Geez, dude, like make a day of it. Come on now."
But you can say you're working.
Yeah, well, exactly. That's true.
And
That's
Jeff,
very
too.
Yeah.
I
started
can tell when
drinking
I
at
showed
10
up to
a.m.
the store and Jeff's been drinking since noon. It's great.
He's sampling.
His tongue's a little funny.
It's important for me to know exactly what I'm bringing into the store. Actually,
Exactly. Well, exactly. Yeah. It's like,
Elizabeth,
When,
you start teaching?
When do you guys expect to be able to start doing in-store tastings again, Jeff?
they've given us no information. Elizabeth actually reached out to the county and got us the ability to have people drink in the front
Right,
on the outdoor chairs,
right.
but they've still given us absolutely no indication, which is not as big a problem for Tipples because we didn't let anybody go. But if you're a bar
Right.
or a pub of any kind, they're not
Yeah.
ready. They don't have any employees. And they're just going to say, go, and the customers are going to want to show up that day.
Right.
It's
Right.
not going to work.
So,
Yeah.
and we, as far as our outdoor seating too, it's not like we can like do a wine on tap or a beer on tap. It has to be a bottle of wine or, a bottle
Right.
of
Yeah.
beer.
Right.
Right, because the package store part can just be enhanced by the seating outside, but as far as the drinking in store, that's a different thing, which is subtle, but it's kind of the bar side of us, which is
Right.
shut down right now.
Right.
So yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, we're just
Yeah.
phase 2. I mean, that's the biggest thing is and so it's like in my background, so I actually work for Butler Enterprises. I do their marketing, so like Archer Road pretty much. And so we have a lot of our tenants that is mainly the restaurants is like when can they open up the bar area? Personally, I'm regular at Tipple's, so it's like when can I actually sit in those nice chairs instead of sitting in 100% humidity and
Right?
like when can I enjoy those nice chairs? And it's just when bars open.
That's right. Indoor Tipples. We'll start doing like some kind of like a video on-site thing. That'd be fun.
Yeah, so it's just and Jeff actually I have some new technology I want to talk to you about. So might be able to do some cool 3D tours of inside Tipples or what's looking like.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that offline. But yeah, so pretty much now we're just we're waiting just for Butler is when the state of Florida says bars can reopen. So it's once we hit that point then. But we've been doing research at Butler, and it looks like there hasn't been any indication anytime soon, unfortunately.
Yeah, we've heard nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, in
People are excited.
California, since the wineries out there, it's worth mentioning, I guess, 'cause I just read this today. A lot of the wineries so if you were doing food service, you had a full service kitchen previously before the coronavirus shelter in place started.
Oh, right.
They're allowing them to now open. So a lot of the wineries that weren't doing food are now like, oh, well, we have cheese and charcuterie plates and whatever. And like the state is coming around and they're like, the health, whatever, fire department, whatever that is. They're like shutting them down. Like, no, you can't do that, So it's becoming like extremely difficult for these guys to have an excuse to get back open again. It sucks.
Well, I got to say, Wagner has taken a complaint to the Supreme Court of California about that differentiation.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. So the Camus, so Wagner, they're the Camus family. They've taken it all the way to the Supreme Court. I don't know that there's been a decision yet, but they're saying, hey, that's ridiculous. You can't differentiate between tasting rooms based on kitchens. So I don't know. We'll see. That could help you guys out if it'd be something that Wagner did for the good.
It could. I mean, especially if it affects Monterey County. God, that would be great. We're good though. We actually have. Oh, so I should. You know what? And I want to make sure I'm not keeping you guys on here too long. If we do get to travel again one day, because I don't expect any of you to unless maybe you guys have an RV packed up, ready to rock and roll. I would assume you would be flying to California otherwise, and we're in Carmel Valley, California. It used to be Chateau Julienne. So we purchased the property now, it was about 6 years ago. Became Folktale Winery, and it is a fully functioning, wine production facility. We do roughly I think it's about 80,000 gallons out of there now or something. All for us, we're not making other people's wines. This is all our own stuff. And then we do concerts on the premises in the barrel room. It's amazing. I mean, look at the website. It's so cool. We have a full service kitchen. The food is fantastic. We have the chef for our kitchen there, executive chef. We have a restaurant downtown called Seventh and Dolores, which has of course been closed for 3 months now. And it's extremely expensive lease. So these are other aspects of the business that we're really hoping we can turn on again soon, because otherwise it's just okay, I guess we're just back to being a winery and that's it, because how long can you go? But I will say, guys, if you get out there and, just in the greater Monterey area, Carmel is so cool. The beaches are beautiful. Bring all weather gear, because it is a little bit, it can be hot as hell in the middle of the day, and they can be wet and cold at the end of the day or in the evening. But fun places, good people. I mean, it's laid back, it's quiet. It's California, so the traffic's always, crappy, but the winery itself is beautiful, and we have space to put people up. So if we get notice, talk to Jeff, get my information, let me know if you're coming, and we'll treat you well. We'll get you a charcuterie board and a bottle of wine, and make sure you got a reservation at the restaurant or whatever. It's a lot of fun. I implore you guys, because everybody knows Napa and Sonoma. Nobody really knows Monterey. We've kind of made it our mission to make sure people like realize, yo, there's like a ton of grapes being grown in the central coast of California. And this is a beautiful town. Clint Eastwood was the mayor. I mean, whether you like his politics or not, who cares? The place is amazing. You know what
It's
I mean?
Clint Eastwood, right?
That's-
Well,
His movies are great.
It's
you
got
know
a
what I
cool
mean?
story. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for our 5-year anniversary, we actually went out to San Francisco and then drove down the Pacific Coastal Highway to Monterey. And then the loop through Monterey and Carmel and all that. And I mean, we loved the
oh yeah,
area.
it was awesome.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
But you're right, we had to have a variety of clothing. It was July, and July, you know, in Florida is only shorts. But yeah, we had to have some sweaters and things because it did definitely drop in temperature.
Yeah, we took a convertible down from San Fran
Yeah.
on the on the PCH.
Yeah.
And I got a sunburn on the way down, and then we were cold like the next 2 days. Yeah.
I love it.
I
The
can go
Floridian, the Floridian out there
It was
visiting,
wonderful.
get the sunburn in the convertible on the way. That's awesome.
I lived
So-
in San Luis Obispo for 5 years. We moved back to Florida about a couple years ago. So we like lived in wine country between like Paso Robles and like Monterey and did that loop, and then had a couple decent wineries in Slow. So it was kind of nice. Carmel is like amazing, straight out of a movie where you just get there and you're like, ah. So
Amazing.
I call it the Shire.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
It looks like there's a bunch of little hobbit holes. The thing is those hobbit holes are worth like $1.5 million, and it's
Yeah, right.
Yeah, my friend's mother lives out there, and he splits his time, and I see their house, and I'm like, what? So, it's beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah, it is ridiculous. So yeah, I think that's my story, guys. Is there anything else anybody wanted to bring? Anyone wanted to share?
Okay.
Well, we're
So
gonna
I
put
guess
up
only
next
add
week's-
one more thing.
Okay.
So and sorry, we're like 6 minutes late. Is there a sparkling?
No, and I'm good
so
to hang
my
out, guys.
famous
I don't care,
bubbles.
whatever.
But is there so a sparkling signature with the same the Mistral that you kind of call is like something you guys like, or
Folktale has some really cool sparkling that I'm going to be bringing into the store.
okay?
Okay, I was trying to make sure I understood that. So
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
asking if there's a sparkling wine like made by Le Mistral or under the
So
Le Mistral
yeah, the
label?
same. Sorry, I couldn't read the actual.
Oh,
so-
it's okay.
but-
No,
but
yeah.
yeah,
So,
so, So yeah, anything like that
Really
that's like
finish.
up and coming, or
so we have a label that is actually the Folktale label, the Folktale Winery label. We do sparkling wines under. That was like kind of the original. The ones I showed Jeff though this past week, it's a kind of a secondary label to the winery, which we do a lot of that because we have a lot of fruit that we kind of just find creative ways to use for other reasons, ways of use, and specifically to the flavor. So it's actually my boss's daughter. She was still like a sophomore in high school. She designed a portfolio of sketches we decided to use for our label designs for this brand, and we were trying to come up with, like a name for it. Like my internet. You guys hear me okay still?
it kind of going in and out.
Crickets.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, leave it to my one
Okay.
question.
So anyways, yeah, Jeff has. No, it's okay. Jeff does have that or saw that wine, so he's aware of it. That's the one we have here now. If you guys are interested in the stuff that we don't currently sell in the state of Florida, which there's a lot of stuff we don't, feel free to reach out to me or check out the website. And honestly, if there's something that you're really digging and you want to try out, I'll get some samples to Jeff so he can try it, and we might be able to bring it in and create something in Florida. A lot of it's just stuff that we only sell directly out of the winery at this point because it's kind of small,
So you represent the winery then? Is not
Yeah,
the
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I'm the Southeast guy / export / every once in a while I grab a mop and like get into the wine room and take care of business. So,
That's phenomenal. Well, thank you so much for everything. It's like,
yeah, man. Thanks for being here, guys.
All right, great. Thank you, Eddie. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We're going to put up the slide for next week's Wine of the Week. I'm going to give you very brief thing. We're gonna go very, very different. Yeah, very, very different. It's the
That
Le
looks
Mistral.
Oh,
Ooh.
nice.
Oh yeah, we're going dry Riesling. So this is my whole thing of playing around with fun wines that people don't normally drink. A dry Riesling from Mosel in Germany. It's delicious. So it keeps enough body to still work with spicy foods, Thai, Chinese, Cajun, seafood. Odd. I like the description they had on their website was like odd salad dressing. Odd. Go with something odd. but anyway,
No ranch.
so we're doing by popular demand, one person. We are going to switch back to a white next week.
And I didn't tell him. I didn't tell him about the text, and then it popped up. He goes, "Yes."
No, it's time. It's been like 4 in a row red. We need to go back to a white. So we're going to do the Dr. Lucen dry, and we're going to have a lot of fun with that.
All right.
So
Great.
thank you all so much. You guys can hang out. We're going to stop the recording, and then I'll start saying what's really on my mind.
Finish
So.
with cheers like we always do.
Oh, that's true.
First. Okay, so cheers. Thank you guys
Cheers,
for coming.
everybody. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks, guys.